the Wendy we met at that juncture was different than the Wendy we had seen a few years before. And after having kind of long conversations with our management, they said, listen, that wasn't Wendy on her best day. She's going to go get some help, go to a treatment center and come back. And then she's going to be ready to do this. And we kind of took them at their word and jumped into it and did legal agreements with all of her lawyers, her management. Took many months to get a deal done that Wendy signed and Wendy was good with. And then we sort of, jumped in and hired Erica and the team, and they began filming what became the rest of the film, which was very unexpected, the twists and turns that it took. And I think you can see in the film, we're trying to grapple with what's going on as it's happening to her and to us, because it wasn't the story we expected or pitched, or what we were expecting to capture. But I think it ended up being something that is incredibly human, incredibly real, and true. And once her family got involved, it allowed us to, take the story in a whole different direction, which was what happens to a family whose mother is in some way incapacitated and a guardian is put in charge of her life. So most of the film that you see in here, she was under, actually the entire time, she was under a legal guardianship and taken out of her family's care. So it became important to us to illustrate the danger, frankly, that we believed she was in, which got more and more serious the longer we filmed. And I think Erica and her team were incredibly compassionate. That's why they were hired, because they all had experience with addiction or, other mental health issues in their lives. And so we tried to create as sensitive a boundary and cushion around Wendy as we could. And this film took, over 2 years to make. So it wasn't like, hey, let's go in and just film and slap together. It was a very stop and go procedure. And I think Erica could speak a little bit to what it was like kind of on a daily basis with her.
I came on board this project because I was really interested in what is it like for a woman in her late 50s to embark on the next chapter of her life. And then it became very clear. We were a very small little team. It was a very intimate little team. And we all cared so much about telling this story honestly and truthfully and sensitively. And as Mark said, when we started, it became clear that addiction was still a big issue for her. She's always been very open about her issues on her show and her life. And I also think we saw firsthand the devastating impact of the loneliness and isolation she had since COVID. And then it, as it progressed, and we talked to Wendy every day when we were filming about what we were doing. She definitely had opinions. And I think in the end, we really pulled the curtain back, or the veil of what was happening in her life at this particular time under the care of a court-appointed guardian. And to be perfectly honest, I was terrified at certain points that she might die in that apartment because the stairs, she has lymphedema, her drinking. It was very scary. There was no food in the apartment. And I often thought, what would happen if we weren't there? And she was alone. She was so lonely. And she loved having the company. And then we felt it wasn't easy. It's not an easy film to watch at times. At times it was very painful to film. But I think we all wanted to show the truth of what was happening and then really work with her manager, because the guardian would not speak to me. I mean, the guardian hung up on me, to be honest. So it was through Will, who we kept pushing and saying, because we saw a decline, that something had to happen and change because she needed help. And then now Wendy's in a safe place. I sometimes really worry, where would she have been if we weren't there? But she's in a safe place getting treated.
And I wanted to talk a little bit more about the filming. We see there's at least, I think, 2 times you show that you decide to stop rolling the cameras. And then, each day you kind of don't know, will she be in a state to be filmed? Will she not? How did you decide when to roll the cameras? How did you decide, this is private, we don't want to show this?
That's a great question. And honestly, as a little team, we talked about it all the time. And I think you see in the trailer the moment when we were just thought we were going to go off and buy some vapes. And all of a sudden it spiraled. And I think that was one of the first moments. I remember talking to you, and I just felt, along with Michael, my colleague, this was time. It was time to stop. And I wanted to make sure she went home, that she was safe. And it was very challenging to navigate at times. It really was. And sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and there's obviously a lot that was filmed that never was shown and never should be shown. So that was a process also in post-production, where like just because we filmed it doesn't mean the world needs to see this. Yeah, we had a long time in Lifetime where our amazing partners in that, and not pushing us and not, asking us to put things in that we didn't think were part of the necessary arc to tell the story. And unfortunately, this isn't a happy story. This is a sad story about someone who's in physical and mental decline and also in jeopardy, and is being, kind of cared for, quote unquote, by someone that's a stranger to their family. And that then became the story for us, is how does this happen? Should this be allowed to happen? It is, after doing research, in this film, like there are many, many thousands of families that are dealing with exactly the same situation without the resources that Wendy has. And so it then became important to allow her family to use this platform to talk about their frustration with the legal system. It's also important to state that we did not know that Wendy had dementia moving into this. We would never have rolled film. Lifetime never would have greenlit it. No one would have done anything. We found out she had dementia very, very late in the process when the family revealed that to us on camera. And as soon as that happened, we're like, Wendy's done. But the story isn't done, because the family now wants to, have this platform and try to make a change for themselves, for Wendy, and for others.
And as you mentioned, her family is such a key part in the narrative, the new narrative that emerges. Can you talk about getting them on board? Were they hesitant? I know her sister, we don't see her until episode 4, and she decides to be a part of it. Can you talk about your conversations with them?
They were hesitant at first, and it took quite a while, actually. And but I think when Kevin Jr., right, and Alex really became very supportive of it. And honestly, Kevin Jr., I'm a mom, and it was agonizing for me to see his struggle and how much he cared for his mom. And how do you deal with a mother who's struggling with addiction? How powerless you feel, and knowing that something else was wrong, but what was it? And so I think it took them time to feel comfortable with us and what was the story we wanted to tell. And we wanted it to be honest, and they wanted it to be honest.
And it was also the only way they could get to see their mother.
Oh, that's true.
They had no access to her in New York. They weren't allowed to fly up and see her. So by filming, what you see in this film is literally the first time she saw her son in over 8 or 9 months.
And her niece, that day, Alex was truly so excited to see Wendy. She hadn't seen her in a year, and then was devastated when she discovered the reality. All these things were missing from the apartment, this, the role of this publicist, what was happening to the people that were around her.
And like Wendy says early on, if it can happen to me, it can happen to you. And that really is the truth of this situation.
And I want to talk about the expert opinion piece as well, because, as a viewer watching it, I'm thinking the same thing. She's with her family. Why can't they just take her to Florida? Or why can't, they stay with her? And there is this kind of element, as you mentioned, the guardian is kind of the shadowy figure. And I think when we see her with the publicist, it's almost a fear they have of doing things without, her consent. That kind of lets you know the parameters of guardianship are kind of boundless. Can you talk about the editorial decisions and showing that, and the experts, that you brought on board?
The editorial decision of showing the
digging into the legal aspects of it. It just became essential that, because whenever we asked ourselves about it, I'm like, I really don't know anything about this. Someone teach us what's going on. How is this possible? Why is this happening to Wendy? And so it was really important to find those people that understood the shadowy practices of how these laws have been passed and how they're being executed. Literally, there's no court record of them going in, and it's all secret, and you can't access it. So we don't even know why, as producers, that Wendy was removed from her family's care and put into a guardian's care, and the guardian won't explain it either. But from our own research, it didn't seem like there was anything so egregious that would cause that decision to occur. And you can also just tell Wendy's family are very nice, lovely people. And who would you want taking care of you if you were in this condition? A stranger or, your sister, your niece, your son, your nephew, all these people that want to have a role in her family. So yeah, it was super important for us to draw back the veil on that and get into it as much as we could in the film.
I just wanted to add one thing too, that I still find it incredible that I couldn't imagine if my child couldn't call me, that her family can't call her. They don't know where she is. She has to call them. And it's been a year, more than a year. How is that possible? How is that possible? And if now, knowing that she has dementia, then you have decline. And if you were a 24-year-old and you care about your mom, I just can't imagine not being able to go see her.
And we talked about, separately some of the criticisms, that came out and people saying, should this have come out? Was there ever a moment where you thought, we may not put this out? And ultimately, how did you decide that you would?
There were many moments from the first day on that we thought this probably won't air, and the big turning point for us was when her family came on board, and then started telling us the truth about the situation that Wendy was in. Because as you can imagine, it was very frustrating for us as producers to be seeing Wendy in the condition she was in, but everyone that was around her in her management and, our publicist was basically saying she's fine. We're going, she is not fine. There's something wrong here. What's wrong with her? Why won't you tell us? You must know more than, you're sharing. And then ultimately when the family came on board and trusted us, they told us the truth, of what was going on. And so that helped us rationalize in some ways, this story is bigger than just Wendy and this family. This story is about something that is happening in the American legal system that no one knows anything about. And this is a way for this to, be addressed. And the family was adamant that the piece be put out. By the way, we sat and watched the entire 4 hours with her family, all the members of her family. Her management watched all 4 hours of it and didn't ask for one change. So if they had different reactions and had other thoughts, then I'm sure we would have reconsidered and thought about addressing those notes. But they all said this is too important not to share.
I think when Wanda's comment in the trailer, if this is the system, it's broken. Yeah. And what should I do? It's my sister.
No, and I was just going to say, Wendy is such an iconoclast, and we, it's in the film, and, we accept everyone's, by the way, judgments on it. It's not for us to say whether you feel it's exploitive or not. I think that's a subjective decision that everyone needs to make for themselves. But she said going into this, there are no boundaries. There are no, I'm a famous person, and my entire career has been based on not respecting celebrities' privacy. Yeah. So why would I be any different? Yeah. And so I know that doesn't necessarily rationalize it, but it is very fitting that Wendy Williams is someone who's willing to show you the truth, warts and all,
I mean, the story is also very much not finished, since this documentary came out. There's been a lot of questions. Where is she still, with her guardianship? Are there plans for you all to continue to follow her story or do a larger piece on guardianship itself? Can you tell me where you might take things?
Certainly no plans currently right now with Wendy, because I think this story needs to kind of unfold and the family needs to have the freedom to do what they need to do, but I think that piece of the story definitely isn't over. And look, if there's a happy ending, if there could be a happy ending to this, we would love to be a part of that, but that's so far down the road and not really something we're thinking about. And the guardianship piece, yeah, I mean, we have a couple projects in development where we would love to dig deeper into that conversation, and not just in the celebrity realm, but for real people that are dealing with these issues.
The power is absolute. It's just extraordinary. And the secrecy, I mean, just health and finance. I mean, it's just, I would be terrified if someone in my family had a court-appointed guardian.
And what did Diane Dimond say? Who wrote the book? There's a new book out by Diane Dimond who's in this. There's this piece. It said over 95% of people, once you're put into a guardianship, you don't get out. it's very, very difficult to overturn it.
Thank you all for shedding a light on it and sharing your experience with us.
Thank you.